My mother invited me over for a peace offering dinner. She said she wanted to apologize for the years of fighting over my father's will. She said she missed her daughter, but when I walked into her house, there was no dinner cooking on the stove. There was no wine on the table. There was just my stepbrother, Kyle, locking the front door behind me and putting the key in his pocket. Sitting on the sofa was a stranger, in a suit holding a clipboard, a man who introduced himself as a specialist. They didn't want to make amends. They wanted to make me disappear. They sat me down and told me I was unwell. They pulled out emails I never wrote, chat logs I never sent, and financial records that had been falsified, claiming I was mentally unstable. Their goal was simple and terrifying: to force me into an emergency court-ordered conservatorship, take away my legal rights, and seize control of my $5 million inheritance. They wanted to do to me what they did to Britney Spears. They thought that because I was the quiet tech girl, I would crumble under the pressure. They thought I was trapped. But they forgot one crucial detail. I don't just work in tech. I am a lead cybersecurity analyst for one of the biggest firms in Silicon Valley. While my mother was shedding fake tears and my brother was blocking the exit, my smartwatch was already silently cloning the data from their open laptop on the coffee table. They invited me there to steal my life. Instead, they just handed me the digital key to put them in prison. This is the story of how I turned their trap into their downfall. The nightmare began with a text message. It was from my mother. Susan, we hadn't spoken in 6 months. Ever since my father passed away and left the entirety of his software patent portfolio worth roughly $5 million to me. He didn't leave a cent to Susan, his ex-wife, or to Kyle, my stepbrother who had spent his 20 seconds gambling away every opportunity he was given. The text read, Madison, please come over for dinner tonight. I made your favorite lasagna. I'm tired of fighting. I just want my daughter back. Please. Against my better judgment, I went. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that grief had finally softened her greed. I drove to the house I grew up in, a sprawling California suburban home that my father had paid for, and which Susan was now struggling to maintain. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. Too dark. I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach, but I pushed it down. I walked up the path, took a deep breath, and knocked. Kyle opened the door. He didn't smile. He didn't say hello. He just stepped aside to let me in. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I heard the heavy click of the deadbolt sliding home behind me. Then, the sound of a chain lock being engaged. Kyle, I asked, turning around. What are you doing? Just keeping things private. Madison, he said. His voice was cold, devoid of the brotherly annoyance I was used to. He leaned against the door, crossing his arms. He was wearing a suit, which was odd for a Tuesday night at home. I walked into the living room. My mother was sitting on the beige sofa. She wasn't holding a tray of lasagna. She was clutching a tissue, looking up at me with eyes that were red-rimmed and watery. But it wasn't the look of a mother happy to see her child. It was the look of someone watching a car crash. Next to her sat a man I didn't know. He was in his 50s, balding, wearing an expensive suit and holding a thick manila folder. Mom, I said, gripping the strap of my laptop bag tighter. Who is this? Where is dinner? Madison. Sit down, the man said. His voice was smooth. I practiced, and dripping with a condescending calmness. I am Dr. Vane. Your mother has retained me to help with your intervention. Intervention, I laughed nervously. I don't drink. I don't use drugs. What is this? It's not for drugs. Sweetie, my mother said, her voice trembling. It's for your mind. We've been so worried. The paranoia. The erratic spending. The angry emails you've been sending us at 3 a.m. It's clear you're having a breakdown. I haven't sent you an email in 6 months, I said, my blood turning to ice. Denial is the first symptom. Doctor, Vane said. He opened the folder and spread several papers out on the coffee table. I stepped closer and looked down. My breath caught in my throat. There, printed on crisp white paper, were dozens of emails. They were sent from my email address. They had my signature. But the words were insane. They were rambling. Violent manifestos threatening to burn down the house. Accusing the neighbors of being spies. And talking about voices in the walls. This is fake, I whispered. I never wrote this. We also have your bank statements. Dr. Vane continued. Ignoring me, he pulled out another sheet. It showed transfers of thousands of dollars to online gambling sites, Kyle's favorite pastime. Not mine. You're blowing through your father's inheritance on impulsive addictions. You are a danger to yourself and your estate. That's a lie, I shouted, looking at my mother. You know this is a lie. You're the one who gambles. Not me. Please. Madison. Stop screaming. My mother sobbed, burying her face in her hands. See, this is the aggression Dr. Vane warned us about. Dr. Vane stood up. He pulled a document from the bottom of the stack. It was a legal petition. Madison. Here is the reality, he said, uncapping a pen. Your mother has petitioned the court for an emergency temporary conservatorship. Given the evidence of your mental instability, the judge is ready to sign off on it tomorrow morning. It will give your mother full legal control over your finances, your medical decisions, and your residence. He pushed the paper toward me. However, he smiled. A shark-like grin. If you sign this voluntary admission form to my private wellness facility in Malibu, we can avoid the embarrassment of a public court order. You'll go there for rest for 6 months. Your mother will handle the inheritance while you recover. It's the best choice for everyone. I looked at the paper. Then I looked at the door where Kyle was standing guard like a bouncer. I realized then that this wasn't a family meeting. It was a heist. They didn't just want the money. They were willing to erase me as a human being to get it. They were going to lock me away in a facility, drug me until I actually did sound crazy, and drain my accounts dry. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I needed to run, but Kyle was bigger than me, and the windows were locked. I needed a weapon, but I didn't have a gun or a knife. I looked down at the coffee table. Next to the fake evidence, Kyle's personal laptop was open. The screen was glowing. He was logged into the home Wi-Fi. I took a deep breath, forcing my face to go blank. I let my shoulders slump, feigning defeat. I feel sick, I whispered, my voice shaking just enough to be believable. I think I'm going to throw up. Can I just sit here for a second? Before I sign. Of course, Dr. Vane said, patting my shoulder. Take a moment. Acceptance is hard. I sat down on the armchair right next to the coffee table. I placed my bag on the floor. And subtly, I slid my left hand over the face of my smartwatch. They thought they had cornered a helpless daughter. They didn't realize they had just let a hacker inside their firewall. I sat frozen in the armchair, my hands trembling. To them, I looked like a woman on the verge of a total breakdown. My shoulders were hunched. My breathing was shallow. Take your time. Madison. Dr. Vane purred, pushing the pen an inch closer to my hand. But remember, the sooner you sign, the sooner you can rest. I need to understand. I stammered, looking at my mother. If I go away, who handles Dad's patent renewals? They're due next week. If we miss them, the estate loses millions. It was a bait question. I needed them to talk. I needed noise to cover what I was about to do. Don't worry about the business. Kyle scoffed from the door. Mom and I have already set up a management LLC. We'll handle the cash flow. You just focus on not being crazy. While Kyle was gloating, I slipped my left hand under the table. I tapped the screen of my smartwatch twice. I wasn't checking the time. I was activating a packet sniffer, a network diagnostic tool I used for work to test firewall vulnerabilities. The house was quiet, which meant the Wi-Fi traffic was low. My watch immediately picked up the strongest signal in the room, Kyle's MacBook Pro. I glanced at the laptop sitting open on the coffee table. Just 2 feet away from me, Kyle, in his arrogance, hadn't even locked the screen. He was running a spoofing program called Email Faker v2.exe. It was literally open on his taskbar. He was so lazy, so confident in his victory, that he hadn't covered his tracks. But I needed more than just a glimpse. I needed the files. I'm scared. Mom, I whined, leaning forward, effectively blocking Dr. Vane's view of my watch. What if the facility is awful? What if they lock me in a room? It's a luxury spa. Madison, my mother insisted, her voice rising in frustration. Stop being so dramatic. We are doing this to save you. As she yelled, I executed a script on my watch. Initiate. Airdrop. Dump. It was a risky move. I was forcing a request to Kyle's laptop to share its recent clipboard history and temporary files to my device. If Kyle looked at his screen, he'd see a notification. I had to keep his eyes on me. But Dr. Vane. I turned to the psychiatrist. Tears streaming down my face now. Real tears born of rage. Not sadness. How much are they paying you? Is it enough to lose your license? Doctor. Vane's smile faltered. That is an insult. Young lady. I am a professional. I saw the transfer. I lied. I hadn't seen it yet. But I knew it was there. My father taught me to always check the accounts. $50,000. Right, my mother gasped. The color drained from her face. That reaction was all the confirmation I needed. A tiny vibration on my wrist. I glanced down. Transfer complete. I had it. The source code of the fake emails proving they were generated on Kyle's laptop. A PDF invoice in Kyle's downloads folder labeled Dr. Vane. Consulting, fee, $50K, 2DF. The evidence was now encrypted on my wrist, but I was still trapped in the house, with 3 people desperate to silence me. She's hallucinating again, Kyle said, stepping away from the door and moving toward me aggressively. She's talking about imaginary transfers. Dr. Vane, just inject her with something. We can get her signature later. Kyle. No, my mother screamed. But she didn't move to stop him. Doctor. Vane reached into his bag and pulled out a syringe. Ideally, we want voluntary compliance, he muttered. But a sedative might be necessary for transport. Panic flared in my chest. This was escalating faster than I had calculated. They were going to drug me. If I passed out, they could use my fingerprint to unlock my phone and delete everything. I needed a distraction. A big one. My eyes darted to the smart thermostat on the wall behind my mother. It was a Nest system, connected to the same Wi-Fi network I had just breached. I tapped my watch again. Access, smart, home, hub. Password. I bet it was Susan 1970. Or maybe password 123. I tried the default factory setting admin. Access granted. Hold him down. Doctor, Vane ordered Kyle. Kyle grabbed my arms. His grip was painful. Stop fighting. Madison, it's over. You're right. Kyle, I said, my voice suddenly dropping the shaky act. It became cold, hard, and terrifyingly calm. It is over. I hit activate, emergency, alarm on my watch. Screech, the house security alarm exploded into life. It was a deafening, high-pitched siren designed to scare off burglars, accompanied by flashing strobe lights from the ceiling sensors. What the hell? Kyle yelled, letting go of me to cover his ears. Turn it off, my mother shrieked. Kyle, turn it off. Doctor. Vane dropped the syringe in the confusion. In the chaos of the flashing lights and the ear-splitting noise, I didn't run for the door. I ran for the window. I grabbed a heavy brass statue from the side table, a hideous thing my mother had bought with my father's money, and smashed it through the glass pane. Crash. The sound of shattering glass mixed with the siren. I climbed out into the cool night air, the glass cutting my palms. But I didn't feel it. She's getting away, Kyle screamed. Scrambling over the sofa, I sprinted down the driveway. I didn't look back. I reached my car, fumbled for my keys, and threw myself inside. As I locked the doors, Kyle pounded on my window. His face twisted in fury. I revved the engine and reversed out of the driveway, leaving them in a house that was screaming just as loudly as they were. I drove 2 blocks and pulled over, my heart hammering against my ribs like a jackhammer. I looked at my wrist. The little green icon was still glowing, evidence secured. I wasn't going to the police station yet. I was going home to compile the report. Tonight. They tried to trap a victim. Tomorrow, they were going to wake up to a prosecutor. 3 days later, we stood in the Superior Court of California. My mother wore black, playing the role of the grieving, burdened matriarch to perfection. Kyle sat beside her, checking his phone, looking bored. Doctor. Vane was on the witness stand, adjusting his silk tie. They were confident. Why wouldn't they be? I had fled the scene like a fugitive. In their narrative, my escape through the window was just more proof of my psychotic break. Your Honor, Doctor, Vane testified, his voice smooth as oil. Ms. Miller is a danger to herself. Her violent outburst at the intervention, shattering a window and fleeing into the night, confirms her severe instability. We need immediate custodial control over her assets to prevent her from hurting herself. The judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on her nose, looked down at me. Ms. Miller, do you have a defense? Your actions do look erratic. I stood up. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was wearing my sharpest blazer, and my laptop was connected to the courtroom's AV system. My actions were a survival instinct. Your Honor, I said clearly, and I don't have a defense. I have a forensic report. I hit enter. The large screen behind me lit up. Exhibit A authorship metadata. Dr. Vane claims I sent threatening emails to my mother, I explained, pointing to the screen. But every digital file has a fingerprint. This is the source code of those emails. A collective gasp went through the courtroom as I zoomed in. As you can see, these emails were not sent from my IP address. They were created offline at 3:00 a.m. last Tuesday. on a device registered as Kyle, Crypto, King, MacBook. I turned to look at Kyle. The boredom vanished from his face, replaced by a sickly shade of gray. He tried to stand up, but his lawyer pulled him down. That's a glitch, my mother stammered. She's a hacker. She faked it. I'm not done. I interrupted her. Exhibit B, the follow the money trail. The screen changed. It showed a PDF invoice. This file was recovered from Kyle's downloads folder during the meeting. It is an invoice from Dr. Vane's private LLC to my mother for HouseUSA. Ling ling ling. The memo line reads, Consulting Services, Expedited Processing. I turned to Dr. Vane. Since when does a medical diagnosis cost 50 grand up front? Doctor. Or is that the price for kidnapping? Doctor. Vane's face turned white. He started gathering his papers, his hands shaking so hard he dropped his expensive pen, and finally, Your Honor, I said, Exhibit C, the audio log. I pressed play. The sound was crystal clear. Amplified by the courtroom speakers, Kyle's voice echoed, It doesn't matter where it is, as long as you're locked away. Just sign the paper. Madison, you're done. Then my mother's voice, I can ensure the funds are safe. It's not about the money. Sweetie. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. My mother looked at the judge, then at me, her eyes wide with terror. She realized the trap she had built for me had just snapped shut around her own neck. The judge slammed her gavel down. The sound was like a gunshot. This hearing is dismissed. The judge announced, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. However, I am ordering the bailiff to detain Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, and Dr. Vane immediately. I am referring this evidence to the district attorney's office. This looks like conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and unlawful imprisonment. No, my mother screamed as the bailiff moved toward her with handcuffs. Madison, tell them we're family. I'm your mother. I watched as they cuffed her hands behind her back, the same hands that had tried to sign away my freedom. You were my mother, I said quietly, closing my laptop. Now, you're just a defendant. I walked out of the courtroom into the bright California sun. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from my security system. All assets secured. Encryption, 100%. They tried to use the system to break me. They tried to use my silence against me. But they forgot that in the modern world, the truth leaves a digital footprint, and I know how to track it. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes it's just a thicker way to drown you. I chose to save myself. If you enjoyed watching a toxic family get exactly what they deserved, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm find other survivors. And I have a question for you. Have you ever caught someone in a lie using technology? Screenshots, GPS, A recording. Tell me your detective stories in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe. Next week, I'm telling you about the time my ex tried to delete my company's database and accidentally deleted his own career. You won't want to miss it. Stay safe. Stay smart. 6 months have passed since the gavel fell in that courtroom. I stood on the front lawn of the house I grew up in, the same house where they tried to trap me. But today, I wasn't running away through a broken window. I was hammering a sold sign into the grass. After the trial, the truth came out like a flood, without my father's money covering the cracks. My mother's financial reality collapsed. The house was foreclosed on by the bank. But as the legal victim of their fraud, I was given the first right of refusal to handle the estate's liquidation. I sold everything. The furniture they staged to look rich. The car Kyle used to drive to casinos. Even the expensive china my mother loved more than her own children. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked at the screen. It was Sunday, my mother's designated calling day. Dr. Vane had been sentenced to 5 years for medical fraud and lost his license permanently. Kyle got 3 years for identity theft and conspiracy. And my mother, she received 4 years for extortion and fraud. I watched the phone ring. I imagined her on the other end, wearing a jumpsuit instead of designer silk, probably calling to beg me to put money in her commissary account so she could buy snacks. She probably wanted to tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that she still loved me. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt nothing. It was like looking at a file that had been corrupted for too long. There was no point in trying to repair it. The only option was to delete it. I pressed decline. Then, I opened my settings and tapped block contact. I walked back to my car, a new convertible I had bought with my own salary. Not my inheritance. I tossed the keys to the house into the lockbox for the new owners. A nice young family was moving in. They had no idea about the drama that had happened in that living room. They would fill it with new memories, overwriting the bad code of the past. As for the inheritance, I didn't spend it on yachts or gambling. I invested half. And with the other half, I started a nonprofit scholarship, the Open Source Initiative. It funds education for young women in cybersecurity, teaching them how to protect themselves digitally, financially, and legally. I started the engine. The radio was playing a song about freedom. They tried to lock me in a system of their control. They thought I was just a glitch in their plan. They didn't realize that I was the architect of my own life. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb. The rearview mirror showed the house getting smaller and smaller, until finally, it disappeared. The system was rebooted. The virus was removed. And for the first time in my life, the operating system was running perfectly. And that is how I deleted my toxic family from my life permanently. If this story satisfied that itch for justice, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Whatever you do, protect your passwords. Protect your peace. And never let anyone, family or not, control your narrative. I'm Madison. And this has been my story. Thanks for watching. Class dismissed.